Hello everybody. So when I was organizing my sewing room, I found this pattern that I had printed off several years ago. It's called Scrappy Squares. It's from Moda. It's a free pattern. So I thought that I would just try to use up some of this fabric that I've got. So I went through my batiks, and it calls for 12 fat quarters. So I just went through and picked out several that I thought would work well together. Teals, blues, purples. Color isn't really showing up on that one very well, but maybe it will later. And then we just got some smaller pieces that I thought would just kind of disperse in there. So I'm gonna just go ahead and get these ironed, and then I will cut them all into 2.5-inch strips, and then those into 10-inch segments. And all of that's in the pattern. And I'll put the link down below to the pattern. And Donna Jordan actually did a video on this, so I'll link her video too. She's much better at teaching than I am. Oh, and here's the background that I'm going to use. I don't really have a lot for all the fabric that I've got. I don't have a lot of background fabric, and I'm sure not going to go out and buy any right now. We're just coming out of a major ice storm here in North Carolina, so I'm not going out to buy any. I don't have any place really close to me that sells batiks anyway. So anyway, this is what I'm going to use. I found it. I need 1.5 yards of background fabric, and this will all be cut into 4.5-inch squares, I think. Yep, 4.5-inch squares. Okay, so it's time to cut our strips, and some of the pieces of fabric that I had were not fat quarters. You saw that I had some strips, and then I have two regular quarter yards. Well, this one's a little bit smaller than a quarter yard, but out of each fat quarter I need 12 2.5 by 10-inch strips. So I'm just going to cut 3 with fabric strips out of this, and that'll give me the 12 that I need. Just going to clean up the edge here. just turn this around. Make sure it's all lined up. I do have 8 layers of fabric here. I'm okay with that. I've got a brand new blade in my 60mm rotary cutter. And my 2.5-inch ruler. Let's make sure everything's lined up. And that makes 3. I'll cut all these into 10-inch strips all at the same time in a few minutes. Sorry, I kicked the camera. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut these into the 10-inch strips, and I have found my shortest one and put it on the top, and I've got them all lined up. I'm just going to cut all these selvages off. Okay, those are all good. And then I'm going to go over 10 inches and cut again. On 27, need to go to 17. You're not cutting very much off at all on these. So that's all you've got left. Alright, I'm going to finish cutting the 2.5 by 10 inch strips, and I'll be back. Okay, for the regular quarter strips that I cut, regular quarter yard, I'm just folding them in half, and then in half again. So that's 4 layers there. I'm just putting them, lining them up with a line on my mat. Making sure they go, both ends go over. I've got the 30 line here and the 20 line over here. Okay. Just cut the ends and folds off of here, and then on the other end it's just folds. So I've got all just the 10-inch lengths. And that is all of the strips that I need to cut. I think I didn't really count. If not, I've got some more scraps I can use. And out of the smaller strips I just had some shorter. I was able to get, they weren't 20 inches long. They were, you know, not quite that much. So just got some smaller strips, and I can use those to cut the 2.5-inch squares out of. And here are all of my longer strips. Okay, so out of the background fabric, we need 11 4.5-inch strips. And I've got this doubled, so I'll be able to cut 2 4.5-inch strips at a time. So I'm going to make 5 cuts and then just one more out of the single layer. Just going to even up my edges. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Okay, so that's got me 2 4.5-inch strips. I'm just going to cut these selvages off. I've got these stacked up 4, 4, and 3. I always double check my measurements too. Okay, so those cuts gave me 88, and I just need 8 more 4.5-inch squares. So I'll just take the ends off of 8 of these and cut the squares. Okay, so I've got my 96 4.5 inch squares. I've got 92 of the 2.5 by 10 inch strips set aside, and this is 52 2.5 inch strips and scraps, and this has all got to be cut into 2.5 inch squares. I need 208 2.5 inch squares. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so I've got all of my 2.5 by 10 inch strips separated into groups of 4. So these all 4 will go together, and I've got them all just lined up here. I'm going to chain piece them. I'm just going to do all of the first 2, and then I'll separate them and then come back and put the 3rd one on each one, and then the 4th one on each one. Okay, so I've just got all these 2s done. Just finger press them all to the right. It's very easy to make batiks go which way you want them to go. I'm just going to put the 3rd on each one, and then I'll cut them apart and do the 4th. I'm just using a 1/4 inch seam on all of these with my 1/4 inch foot. And with batiks too, you really don't have a right or wrong side. I mean, there are a few where you can really tell, you know, what's the right side and what's the wrong, or one side may look better to you than the other, and just use that. Otherwise, it really doesn't matter. just going to add the last one, and then I will press them. Again, I finger press to the right, and I'll press them. And okay, well, my battery died while I was filming sewing on the 4th strip and pressing these, and I didn't realize that the battery was dead, so I have no footage of that, but I think you get the gist of just sewing on the 4th strip. And all of these are pressed the same way. Well, I pressed them to my right while I was after each one, and then just pressed them with the iron after that. And now I'll just have to cut these into 2.5 inch strips, and I'm just going to pile them up here and cut a couple at a time, and just kind of offset the seams so they're not so bulky, and just make sure they're straight. But you could do this with a jelly roll, or if you have a bunch of just 2.5 inch strips, scrap strips, or if you have a whole slew of, actually this other edge is a little straighter, if you have a whole slew of 2.5 inch scraps, blocks, squares, you can make it super scrappy. That would be beautiful, actually. Just have all of your squares be different. You just have to sew a lot more. Okay. And I really love this 2.5 inch ruler. Just got to make sure you get it lined up with your fabric and on a line with your mat. And it's as quick as that. I've got a tiny little bit over here where it's not completely even, but that's excuse me, that's it. That's all. And you've got all these. And then after that, we've got to sew them into a set of 2, and then sets of 4. And then some 4 patches with the squares. So let me go ahead and get these cut. I've got all the rest of these to do, and then we'll start sewing these together. Okay, so I have sewed all of my strips together. You need to make 10 of these with just the 2 4-block strips. 10 of those, and then you make 18 with the 4 strips. And they are, I think they're 8 inches. Do it over here. Yeah, they're 8 inches square. And then 4 of these 4-patch corner blocks. And next, we're going to take these 96 background squares and sew 2 of the 2.5 inch squares. Just put one on, each opposite corner and sew them. I'll make them like that. You can draw a line on the backs of each of these and then just sew on the line. I'm not going to do that because these are fairly small. They're pretty easy to eyeball. I also have the diagonal seam tape on my sewing machine, so I'm just going to use that. But yeah, you just sew a square on 2 opposite corners and cut them off. And I'm going to do that, and then I'll meet you right back here. Alright, So I've got all of the squares sewn to 2 corners of each of my background squares, and I just went ahead and sewed a second line from the first, about 1/2 inch, and then you can cut that off and get a little half square triangle extra. And these are, I don't know if I'm going to incorporate these into this quilt or put them in the crumb bag or what. They come out to just about 2 inches, but they're really cute. So I'm just going to get all of these trimmed off and pressed, and then we can start putting everything together. Okay, so I've sewed all of the background squares together. I've got 14 of these. This just got the 2. And then there are 17 that have 4 blocks all together. And I went ahead and sewed together the little extra half square triangles from these into flying geese. And I'm thinking I may make a border out of these. I'll see how that works out when I get it all together. But so now it's time to start putting these together and make the quilt top. And we just, let me see, got one of the 4 patches and then the half, all the little half blocks here, and then we start with full rows. So I want to figure out how to get that together, and I will meet you back here. Okay, so this is my design wall, and the lighting in here is not the best, but I'll try to show you what I'm doing. So we start with a 4 patch, and then one of the pieces with just the 2 with the background, and then the half block of those, and that's just, you have 3 of these and 2 of these, and of course 2 corner blocks. And then you're going to take another one of the half blocks and just put it right there, and then take a full block and just put it right there, and then you'll have grab one of these. Well, that's the same. You'll put one of these, and then you just do that across until you use them up. Hello everybody. Excuse my voice. I've been sick for a few days. Not sure what it is, just a sore throat and a little cough. But what I wanted to show you is, well, let's see if I can turn this a little bit. I've sewed the quilt top together. I've just been sewing for the past couple of days without recording since I've been sick. But look what I did, guys. Look, do you see? I flipped these 3 blocks. This one should go over here on the end. So I'm gonna have to, I'll just take the seams out, you know, from here, just around this little section, and then sew it back in. But I thought I was done with the top, but I'm not. And I used, I don't know, I've got a new phone and I'm not sure about the orientation of this video. But I used the little flying geese that I made in an outer border. I'm sorry if that makes you dizzy. I've got to figure out this camera. It seems to be different. It seems to be just the opposite of my other phone. So, but otherwise, I think it looks pretty good. I like how it's turned out. Just got to fix that one little section, and then she'll be done. But mistakes do happen. It's you know, It's just fabric and thread. It can be fixed. No problem.